What's the deal, everyone? Welcome back to the studio. I'm Jeremy Deal, and I have a bunch of on-site footage I'm going to be throwing your way this entire video.
What's the deal, everyone? Welcome to Location with me. We are at a tiny house today, and I'm going to show you how to photograph a tiny house.
I decided instead of just playing a bunch of me on-site footage, I'd come in here and do it the proper way so you all get the best viewing experience. Plus, I was having a few audio issues on site, and I didn't want to subject you to that again. Man, I've been having some bad luck with audio these past few videos, if you haven't noticed. So let's jump into the very first thing, and that's gear. The gear I use and why I recommend using it. The first thing you're gonna need is a camera, and you can use a cell phone, but the quality won't be as good, and you'll not be able to do the HDR bracketing technique and a whole host of other reasons why I recommend you do this with an actual camera. But you use what you use, or should I say you use what you got, right? I'm using the Sony a7 IV that I'm recording this with, and I'll be doing it with the Sony 12-24 4G. And on the front of this is the Wonder Pana system using the 148mm circular polarizer. I use this camera and lens combo for a specific reason I'll cover in a moment, but if you can't afford the 12-24 lens and you're looking for a cheaper lens to get the job done properly, I'd recommend the Laowa 9mm. I think that's how you say it. Yes, it's an APS-C lens, but it's super sharp, and the lens I usually use for doing real estate video with this camera. If you're someone who purchased a 16mm lens, thinking it would be wide enough for real estate, and you're gonna be so sad when you try and use that in this tiny house. It's just simply not wide enough to make a difference. And if you deliver images from that lens, the agent will wanna know where their wide angle shots are that make the property or the tiny house feel larger. Do yourself a favor and go in with the right gear so you're not struggling to make things work like I was with my audio earlier. And since I'm on the topic of the APS-C, let's go into why I'm using this camera and lens combo together and why that selection is important to my workflow. First off, having the zoom capabilities, especially on a tiny house where smaller details matter much more, it comes in clutch on site to not constantly have to move your tripod around. Not only that, the thing I love about the a7 IV is that you can remap almost every button on the camera. So I actually remap my AEL on the back to crop into APS-C mode. This allows me to take this 12-24 lens and essentially turn it into a 12-60mm with the variations of crop from full frame to APS-C. If you end up going with that cheaper Laowa 9mm I mentioned earlier for the budget option, this will actually not be an option for you because that lens is already APS-C, so already at its tightest crop factor. You can't crop anymore. On to the rest of the equipment.
I'm gonna cut on the lights and off the fan. There we go. These lights are pretty bright in here. There we go. All right, we have all the lights on. The next thing I wanna do is actually go around and open up all the windows because this is a tiny house. You kind of have to open the windows or you're gonna feel a little bit claustrophobic in the final images. So that's why they have these big ones up top usually. Let's not knock their picture off the wall. There we go. All right, open this one. There we go.
For this shoot, I'm gonna be doing an HDR technique, so I don't have to carry in place nearly as much lighting as I usually do, but this process does come with its own issues, and you'll see that in the near future. Because of this, I'll really only need the one strobe, and I'll be using the Godox S Pro for the trigger, and I use a rubber band because I broke it by dropping it many times. And I'm gonna be using the Godox 80-200 Pro that's been reskinned into a flashpoint body because I dropped it so many times, I had this plastic crack. I was sending stuff off to Adorometer Repair because, in case you didn't know, all of the current Godox and Flashpoint brand strobes, they're cross-compatible. So I asked if they could fix it at the same time that they were fixing my Flashpoint stuff, because at the time I had to tape my power switch on so it would work. And they said, no problem, they do it all the time. That's awesome. So it says Evolve, but it's a Godox. Other than that, I have my trusty 20-year-old Manfrotto tripod and my shoe covers. I don't take my shoes off anymore at properties. Instead, I buy these little shoe covers with a little grippy so I still have arch support for my shoes and I can grip on freshly waxed hardwood floors. They're super cheap, and I'll put a link down below, along with the links to everything else I'm talking about. They can all be found on Amazon storefront, so just go and browse everything there, and you can see basically everything I recommend from Amazon. There is one more piece of gear I highly recommend for shooting a tiny house specifically, but of course, I forgot it here in the studio before I left, and that's simply a tiny little bean sack. Here's one right here. Boom. Tiny houses require you to put your cameras in areas you might not usually do when shooting traditional interiors to make the space look larger. Usually you can just leave it on a tripod, but it's much more difficult in tiny spaces. In this shoot, I'll put my camera down on the stairs and again on the kitchen counter to try and expand the floor space and footprint to make it feel larger in the final image. Since I forgot this for the shoot, I just made do with whatever I could find around the house, so apparently I should have watched this video before I left for work this morning.
All right, squeezing into this closet, here we go. And now back into it. So the reason I'm shooting HDR is because seeing outside of the windows here is going to be critical since it's such a tiny space. So that's the main reason I want to do HDR. And the second reason is, once again, I can't really hide my strobes all over the place like I typically would in a larger house, and it'll just look overall better if I do the HDR. So let's talk about a few techniques that help your editor whenever you're doing an HDR, just in case. So if you've done HDR images before, then I don't know if you have yours set up to a hot. Mine's set up hot, so that way I can just push a button and it'll do a 5 bracket HDR automatically. One thing you should know whenever you're doing these for editors is that you want to overexpose your interiors by about 1 stop. So when I press down my trigger halfway, it gives me an exposure reading, and as you can see, 0.1, that's what we're looking for. 5-stop bracket, and then what you're gonna do after the 5-stop bracket is I'm gonna switch over to my regular mode. I'm gonna make sure I can see out of these windows, turn on my strobe, and now what I'm gonna do is give this a pop. Now what that does is it gives a color tone for the editor to reference. Let me pull that back up, and it allows you to see out of the window. So as you can see, you've got your 6-shot, and then you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-shot bracket. There we go. Now, that's how I'm rolling with the bracketing. You want to do the 1 stop over when you do your bracket for your editor, so that way those dark rooms and dark areas don't look so grainy, because that's where they have the most issues when it comes to HDR images. Even if you take your own, you may be having issues there, so that's something you can look into. Try overexposing by a stop, and it may help a lot of your grain issues if you edit all of your own imagery. Here we go, just like last time. I'm gonna look back, and the reason I'm doing it from here is because I'm trying to cut it off right here, so that way it feels larger and more open. And this time I'm gonna do the flash shot first. There we go. Can see perfectly out all those windows. The editor can see the colors of the room. Now we can go back to my 5-stop bracket. A little too much. You want it to be right there on, there we go. Boom. 5-stop bracket. Okay. I'm gonna pop this off, and I'm actually just gonna set the camera up on the stairs because it'll give us a little bit bigger view, and I'm just gonna have to hold it to make sure. There we go. Now before I take a picture, let me grab this, and knowing what's gonna happen, I'm just gonna go ahead and set this up here so it'll pop off automatically for me whenever I switch it over. So let's go ahead and level it up, just like that. Perfect. Sorry, I forgot about that one piece of gear. Usually I bring a beanbag or a sack to place my camera on top of for setting on top of the counters, but I apparently left that at home today, which makes this the perfect day to talk about the gear you should use for these shoots, right? All right, so we've got a lot of the main composure shots. We've done that. Let me show you how to use this tripod on these stairs to get this top photo, because this is where HDR photography is kind of annoying, for lack of a better term, since you have to have everything in that same place. You just saw the issues it causes if it's not perfectly lined up. Now, typically when I shoot stuff like this, move this out the way. raise these just a little bit so it isn't tilting back, because I don't want the camera to fall on me or fall over at all down these stairs. That would be horrible. There we go. So typically in situations like this, I would never show this wall over here. I would crop it in like this, and I will take one of these shots actually. There we go. Put this to overexpose by 1. Switch it over and make sure we can see through those windows, and we'll give this the pop. So we've got the color. There we go. Oh, look at that. I hate that tag sitting right there. Let me move around like this and not fall off the edge. There we go. That looks a little better. And let's get rid of this piece of paper. We'll put that in my pocket. And we'll do this all again. This time we'll start with the pop since we're already on that setting. There we go. Now back to the 5-stop bracket. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is do one more that shows all of this, because I don't really have a way to shoot these windows. Since I want to make sure that they can see them so they know they're part of them, do one of these shots. There we go. Now we've got this little upstairs bedroom shot. Creepy crawl on back down the stairs here. And now what we're going to do is shoot this kitchen. So the kitchen's a little difficult because you can see all the way into the bathroom over there. So I'm going to do like before. I'm going to raise this, and I'm going to have to raise both of these so it's not falling over just like before, because I'm going to have to put one leg on this couch. And I'm going to have to take off this jacket because, whew, I am dying in here. All right, there we go. Now what I want to do is try and highlight just this kitchen part first. Like that. There we go. Let's make sure we're in focus. Boom. All right, let's do the pop first. Here's the strobe. Make sure we get all this. And I'm just going to kind of lean back over here after I push the button. So that way I can't see myself in there. There we go. We got the color, we got the windows. Back to the 5-stop bracket. There we go. Now I'm not going to move the camera because this table right here flips up, and it's a big selling feature that they already told me about. So I'm going to pop this up, but I wanted to wait till last in case I couldn't get it back down, because that does happen occasionally. Now let's do the same thing we just did, but without moving the camera. This time we've got the table up. Let's go back here and hit the pop. Boom, now we got both of them. Now, let's see if we can get a shot that doesn't show the camera but looks all the way down. Let's see. So I'm trying to line up the camera right here on, I guess, like the frame of this window. Let's see. Can I see that? I can just see this. There we go. Perfect. So there we go. I've now made sure everything's nice and level. Make sure everything's in focus. Now the first thing we're going to do is pull this in so I can't see it in that mirror down there. And we'll do the pop. There we go. Now, 5-stop bracket, just like before. And overexposed by 1. There we go. Very nice. Now let's do the same thing, but as I mentioned before, I'm going to use my APS-C crop in mode, so I go in nice and tight, and this is going to give me a much tighter view of the kitchen. Let's open this up a little, make sure we're in focus again. There we go. You'll notice I keep going back to make sure we're in focus, and that's because so many times I've done this, just accidentally not paid attention to focus, honestly. So, perfect. Now, I'm gonna see if I can close this thing up. There's one on both sides. Oh, can't drop my light. Set that over here. And now we're gonna go on to shooting just the kitchen itself. So, I'm gonna leave this nice and tight for this one because I want to show off just these cabinets right here. That's the whole goal of this shot. You know, usually in a normal house, I would take pictures off, but this being a tiny house, it doesn't really matter as much because the person who owns it is just a single person. It doesn't really matter if their portraits are up on the fridge, and it kind of makes it feel a little bit more homey, for lack of a better term. So I'm not gonna stress about that personally. So now, let's get the main kitchen. There we go. Check focus as always. That is not quite straight. There we go. All right, let's overexpose again by one stop. Switch it on back over. And let's get this pop. Boom. There we go. Now let's see if we can do this shot. I'm just gonna stand up here for a minute to see if it's even possible. And it is, so we're gonna do it. Now, typically I do not take any shots that do not show perfectly straight verticals, but in this situation, there is such little house, and this is a shot I get requested a lot to kind of show this angle from looking from the stairs. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get my pop just like before and try and stay super still, which is already not working. All right. This is why I hate these shots, because it doesn't allow you to really be super precise of your placement. All right, let's try one more time. Boom. All right. There we go. We got that shot. Well, now we are getting really close to being done with these interiors, honestly, because there's not really much else to do for the tiny house. As you can see, I'm really focusing on little things. I'm gonna shoot back one from this side that just shows the full space entirely. And what I'm gonna do, instead of holding my strobe in here, I'm gonna set it right up here. So that way, whenever it pops, it gets the color tone for all of this area, because that's a little more important. And I'm gonna go move my jacket because I don't want that in the shot. It's okay if their stuff is in the shot, but I don't want my stuff in the shot. All right, let's just do a straight on first, see if we can get that. There we go. See how I'm using this part of the house right here to kind of line up to make sure all my verticals are correct and straight, or as straight as I can get them before I send them to the editor. There we go. All right, let's get this pop first. There we go. There we go. Now we're gonna set the camera over here as far as we can get it in the corner. So that way we can kind of get this corner sink shot leading in. There we go, make sure we're in focus. Oops. And switch it over. There we go. All right, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna set this down because I think you kind of get the point, right? How much more of this do you want me to see me move around everything in the bathroom? I doubt you do. So that's basically the end of shooting inside. Let's go to post-production back in the office.
The process of shooting the property itself is not that much different than shooting a larger property. The only difference is how creative you can be with your tripod placement and trying to stay out of reflections in windows. Tiny houses tend to have more mirrors than larger houses because the owners want them to feel just larger. So just be prepared to look over your scenes extra hard to make sure you're not in one, or go around in advance and move the ones that will definitely be causing issues. Make sure to try and shoot wide and tights of each composite. Since there's not many places to put your camera, when you find a good shot, take advantage of it. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and show you how to shoot the exteriors because this is typically the most important part of any tiny home sale that's not being moved. This one is, so we're not worried about exteriors. And if you've watched any of my other videos, then you already know how to take a really awesome exterior image. All that's left to do is send it off to the editor because I hate doing these edits. They take more time than I'm willing to give them, and I would much rather pay the right person to do the right job so I can spend the evening with my dog and wife instead of hunched over the keyboard all night. As always, keep rocking and rolling, enjoy what you're doing, make smart business decisions, and don't forget to check out my last video drop with the full real estate video edit. It's a release for my members program, and it also has bad audio, so you can make fun of me twice. And if you really like the information, consider joining my members program. That's where I do all of these full real estate video edits, and I talk about the things I can't put out here in the public channel. Catch you next time. You made it all the way here to the deep end. Shout out Colin Samir. I want to invite you to go check out my new channel I'm working on with a full team, writer, editor, and all. I didn't want to interrupt the information to shout it out before, but if you're interested in navigating the lies of scam marketing in our modern society, then go check out the brand new channel, Scam Proof Media. I'll put the link down below, and if it's not your thing, that's cool too. Catch you next year. Peace.